This is Melissa Thomas for Florida National News. We are here at the Windermere Town Hall for the kickoff of our FNN Politics and Power series, where we'll be interviewing local elected officials to help you get to know your elected officials more personally and find out the projects that they're working on, some of their proudest achievements, and what's next in the future of the cities that they serve. Today, we'll be interviewing Windermere Mayor Gary Bruhn, who has been the mayor of the town of Windermere for 14 years. So stay tuned for our full one-on-one interview with him, and stay tuned for more interviews like these at FloridaNationalNews.com. So you've been mayor for 14 years now.
Yeah.
Kind of just give our audience an overview of the changes you've seen in the town of Windermere in that time.
Wow. Well, actually, I've lived here 28 years, which is even more astounding when you think about it, but mayor half of that time. Just the unbelievable growth. Areas that are around here that are now housing developments and apartments used to be all citrus. But the freezes of the late 80s dramatically changed the landscape. Metro West was just all orange groves, and we saw what's happened there. And Horizon West, which is right now just to the very west of us, is one of the fastest growing areas in Florida, the fastest growing probably in Florida, and maybe even the nation. I mean, it's astounding.
And in your 14 years, what do you feel has been the most fulfilling project for you in the town of Windermere?
Well, I think we had a police department that a lot of people probably know that had some issues, had some very big issues. And the biggest challenge was restoring, I think, credibility to our police department. We were very fortunate. We got a police chief that took the job on knowing that this was going to be a challenge. And we basically built our police department from the ground up. Wow. Everyone had to reapply for their job. We didn't know if there were officers there that really should have been police officers. So in the 5 years, we literally had everyone come in and reapply for their job, and as a result, we had a lot of individuals that didn't apply. So we've built our police department basically from the ground up with a new police chief, a new deputy chief, and today we consistently rank in the top 3 for departments our size in the state. We have a detective that is, well, he got Detective of the Year last Wednesday, and that tells you, and the experience he has brought. Believe it or not, he was the detective that did all the investigations during the Casey Anthony trial. So that tells you the kind of quality and the experience that we have. My police chief served for 24 years, I think, on the Orange County Sheriff's Office, and he was what we call the sector captain. So he knew this area. And so he knows what was involved, and he knew what the challenges were. And I think seeing our police department from where it was to where it is just probably the most fulfilling thing, because there were some individuals that were actually saying, well, maybe we shouldn't have a police department anymore. The police department was one reason why I moved here, and a lot of people moved here, because we feel safe. I mean, we've got a full-time police department, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's a commitment of a number of individuals that you are going to have to hire to have that. But by the same token, we're less than 2 square miles. So that means that we can have an officer anywhere in our town in an emergency in minutes. And that can make the difference between life and death in minutes. If you have a child that's in the pool, if you can be there in minutes, you can save that life. Heart attacks, you can save that life if you can get there. We have the defibrillators on board, everything that we can do. So from the standpoint of the police department, which is I'm very proud of, it's also just a great feeling that you know if you have an emergency, you'll have someone there in minutes. And you can't always say that about other areas.
I noticed that you're a very accessible mayor. I noticed you're very hands-on, you're very communicative with your constituents. How do you think that helps to cement that relationship with you and the community?
Well, I think you got to remember, this is a small town. It's not like Coe or Winter Garden, where they have so very many residents. On my business card, it's my home phone number. You
Wow.
know, I have you have access to my emails. I answer. My goal is to answer every email by the end of the day. Now, sometimes I'm traveling or something, but my goal is always be able to, respond within the day. And I don't have a scheduler. You and I were talking about that earlier. I like to do, there are some people that say, well, you can't be here and here in that time frame. I say, yeah, sometimes I can. So I know my schedule and what is involved. So I don't know, maybe it's the old axiom, even when I was working in my full-time job, if you want the job done right, do it yourself.
What are your views on the overall development of the greater Orlando area? You and I were talking earlier about, the construction going on with 528, with the 408, with I-4. Like, kind of speak to the boom that's going on across Orlando.
Well, one of the things they keep saying is, oh, God, please let me live to see when I-4 will be done. And then people say, Gary, it's never going to be done. But I mean, we're still talking like 2022. But traveling is a challenge, but I think, boy, when it's done, it's going to be very impressive. I think the one area that I've already seen is going to be the whole Kirkman Road I-4 interchange. You can see these huge elevated bridges to nowhere right now, and it's like, this is going to be very impressive. But in any given day, there are 1 million people here that don't live here.
Right.
Yes, they're paying the tourist tax and the sales tax and that, but I always think about the infrastructure that's needed to house 1 million people that don't live here. And of course, from federal highway standards and federal things, they don't count the tourists. They look at residents. So we don't get a lot of the credit that we should, I think, for when it comes for funding from Washington, D.C. But like I said, to think that any given day in the Central Florida area, there are 1 million people that don't live here, and they flush toilets, they take showers, and it always amazes me that in this whole Central Florida area, Orlando and Orange County, that we can accommodate not just the infrastructure, but the building, the housing, and everything for all these tourists. So it's just an amazing engine, and I don't see it slowing down. So, I mean, that puts things really in perspective of what we see in the area. And that's maybe one reason why I think a lot of people like the Windermeres and the Oaklands and some of your smaller towns. You're still close to I-4, the Florida Turnpike. I can get downtown on a good day in maybe 30 minutes. Lately with traffic, maybe an hour, but nevertheless, you're still accessible to the metropolitan area, and yet you're living in a much more rural setting, so to speak.
What is the next project you have your eyes on? What is that next top priority for you?
Well, one of the big things is pedestrian safety, and that's one of the things that we're working on. We have probably within a 3-year span coming up, trying to at least link. We still have areas that don't have sidewalks, and that's a pedestrian issue. So intermobility, I think I would call it. It's trying to expand our sidewalks so that you can walk and sidewalk anywhere. We've got a very fortunate area here because we have what we call the Dirt Main Street area that you can actually traverse north and south town almost the whole way. But east-west, we still have some holes in. So the next 3 years, I'd like to see, one, our expanded sidewalks usage to make us more pedestrian friendly. And it's no secret that Central Florida is almost #1 for pedestrian fatalities. And as a matter of fact, I've been talking about that in a recent newsletter as to why is Central Florida the #1 issue, or the #1 problem being pedestrian safety. And part of it's maybe because we have sunshine year round and more people walk. In Minneapolis, and it's 20 below, they're not doing that much walking, but that's one factor, maybe. You also have, we talked about a lot of tourists not familiar with the area, and you have that situation with individuals that are not paying attention as tourists, what have you. But nevertheless, that doesn't really justify Windermere because we're not in that tourist area. But nevertheless, we still have the issue, and I think a lot of it is education. We had this last year 57 or 56 million visitors. Wow. 56 million tourists. And although we don't necessarily feel the brunt of that right here in Windermere, we still see the traffic. And if you've got to use the airport, we see that. Because if you're familiar with the town of Windermere, it's an island. We're surrounded by all three sides by lakes, and there's only basically 3 roads, 3 exit points. So that becomes a really big challenge when you have every workday 14,000 vehicles traveling through town. What you're seeing is traffic backing up all the way into the roundabout, and that means you can't get the emergency vehicles in. So this has been a big project that I've been trying to get through for a few years, and I'm trying to find alternate methods. I'm trying to work with the various land planning agencies, MetroPlan, and as well as the city of Ocoee, to try to perhaps extend Old Winter Garden Road. That was one of the projects that I think would really, really be helpful, getting people around the town and not have to cut through. So that's one of the things we're working on.